For this video, I'll be looking at the top 10 artifact cards I want to see added to Brothers War Mystical Archive, specifically for Arena and more specifically for Historic. Now for a card to get on this list, it has to be fairly old and a classic. And that's about it for the criteria. Let's hop straight into number 10. At number 10, we've got Memory Jar. Now, if you are in your 40s, you may get PTSD from this card because of what it did back in the 90s, with especially Urza's Block constructed. Now, I've never played with this card ever, except for like one game or something. But what really made it busted back then was Tolarian Academy, which isn't on Arena. And like, what would it do to Historic now? It's probably not too powerful. It's a 5-mana artifact that you sack to get a mild card selection. You know, you can recast it with Emery. It would be a very neat card to brew around, but it's not overbearing. So I say, why not? It's a classic, let's add it. Or let's get on to number 9. Alright, number 9, 8, and 7, I'll just tell you up front, are cards that I'm unsure about if it would be too good for Historic, but they're such classics and there's such neat design space that I say let's give it a try. So our first very powerful card is Phyrexian Dreadnought. A 1-mana 12/12 trample, but you have to sack it unless if you sacrifice creatures with total power 12 or more. Now the reason I think this is too powerful is because we have Stifle and we have Strict Proctor in this format. Stifle specifically allows a turn 2 12/12 trample, which you can tell that's a bit good. However, if the opponent has a single Fatal Push or Portable Hole or insert removal spell, then you've just wasted 2 cards and you've got 2 for 1. If you're like a Goblin deck or an Elf deck, I'm not even really sure you care about this because you're planning on killing your opponent by turn 4 anyways. So at least if you're on the play, you don't entirely care about this. I think this is mostly fine, but there's no other card like it. And as far as specific cute synergies on Arena, I'm not quite sure if there is one. I'm sure there is, but again, just another fun card to brew around on the more powerful side, but I say let's give it a try. Number 8. Okay, I'll totally understand that if this gets added, it's probably going to get banned. But like we're talking about iconic artifacts that are old, and Lotus Petal is probably one of the most iconic cards. It's a riff on the most iconic card in Magic of all time. This card is a staple in Legacy. It's legal in no other format except for the old ones. Now, would this be a problem in Historic? Now, the thing about Historic that's really neat is that there's a ton of the classic, overpowered, very powerful payoffs such as Tendrils of Agony, Balls of Citadel, Underworld Breach, but those are all fine because there's no enablers as in the fast mana. But adding fast mana to Historic, I think that's an experiment we can at least try once, and even if it gets banned like it probably will because it synergizes really well with Emery, which can be slotted into the best deck in the format right now, Blue-White Artifacts. And then another thing to keep in mind was you can actually do a feasible turn 1 Chalice of the Void. Like, I know there's other ways to do it, but this is the simplest and cleanest, and turn 1 Chalice of the Void on 1 is, it's certainly a play. Honestly, it might be healthy for the format to stop those annoying wizard decks which have a ton of 1-drops, and the Phoenix decks as well, and the food decks which aren't really prevalent that much anymore. But yeah, even if this gets added, gets banned within a week, or is pre-banned, it would still be nice to, you know, have fun with it. Be able to play with it in the bot matches, friendly matches. Yeah, that's, I've said my piece. Let's go on to number 7. Now this card has quite, how do I put this? The immediate guttural reaction to this card is, oh heck no. Let's ban it if it were added. Let's just keep it away from our format, but let's take a deeper dive into why this is completely broken in the older formats and might be fine in Historic. Actually, before we get into that, what I wanted extremely iconic, and extremely neat, cool, unique build around. Yeah, those are the reasons. Alright, first problem, Underworld Breach. I believe Underworld Breach was banned in Legacy because of Lion's Eye Diamond, but in Legacy there's a card called Brain Freeze, which is essentially a way to continuously fill your graveyard enough to where you can just Lion's Eye Diamond through your entire deck, or Brain Freeze through your entire deck and cast whatever you want because of Lion's Eye Diamond. However, that card's not on Arena, and the Breach deck, which there is one, shocker, I know, like somewhere out in the prairie. It's very rare, but it's there. It would help the deck, but I don't think it'd be too good. My main concern would be the Unburial Rites Reanimator deck. This would be a turn to reanimate your biggest boy. I don't think that's okay. But what I am willing to do is have this added to the arena at the cost of banning Unburial Rites. And then if Lion's Eye Diamond's too good, we could just unban Unburial Rites. Like, make the Reanimator deck play a reanimation spell that isn't just, oh look, I got milled, I got a reanimation spell. There's still that 2-mana creature that is Unearth for 5, so this would be a turn 3 reanimate, but you can still do the same effect by playing her on turn 2 and then turn 3 activating her ability, so that's already, turn 3 reanimation is already a thing. But yeah, my main concern. And then at Madness deck, there is a Madness deck technically, but it's not really there. I'm sure Madness would play it, but I'm not even sure how good it'd be, because you do have to discard your entire hand. Maybe some like Ox of Agonis thing. But like, these are decks that don't really exist on Arena, and it would help boost those decks. So to summarize, iconic may be a bit too powerful. It'll definitely power up some weaker fringe strategies. Can pretty much only come into the format assuming Unburial Rites gets banned, but that's definitely a trade I'm willing to make. It's a very fun card to brew around, and it'd be a great addition, I believe. At our number 6, we have Cursed Scroll. Definitely an iconic card. Definitely not too powerful for Historic. It is a way for, I believe, burn decks used it back in the day, to like finish off the opponent once you've run out of gas. Now, I don't really care to play with this card, but I know a ton of people would. And again, just iconic. This is a very iconic card that's very safe to add, so you might as well, right? Not much to say there. Let's go on to number 5. Metalworker. Now this card, I've never played with it. However, when I first started Magic, this was one of the cards. Like, you just read it, and it reads so powerful. In practice, I'm pretty sure it's fair. Like, I think it's an okay power level, right? But yeah, reveal any number of artifact cards from your hand to add 2 colorless for each of those cards revealed. Now, where would this find homes? Maybe a blue-white artifact deck, or just any artifact deck that's looking to go big mana. Maybe like a little bit of Tron in quotation marks, unless they had the Tron lands in Brothers War as well. Then it becomes real Tron. Yeah, because Tron right now is filled with artifacts like Mind Stone, blah 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 blah. So if you play this on turn 3, then turn 4 you get Ulamog or whatever. Meh. Other decks are winning by turn 4, so power level wise, I think it's fine. But yeah, this was just one of the, like, the early Magic, not career, but like early Magic experience cards that just wowed you, filled you with excitement, and I'd love to be able to finally play with it. At number 6, we have Mistress Bubble. This card would certainly see play. It goes straight into the artifact deck. It may or may not go into any Dragon's Rage Channeler deck. It'll probably go into the Jund Minrange deck. So it'll see play, alright? I don't want to keep using the word iconic, but you know, iconic. That's kind of a given for every card on this list. A little more so for Mistress Bubble, because it sees so much play in every format it's legal in. It's legal in Modern, and I've seen a few people call for it to get banned there, but for the most part, it's a pretty safe mainstay of the format. It's not going anywhere. Historic is rapidly approaching Modern power level. It's not there yet, but it's getting there, and these mystical archives help push it there. Another advantage of adding Mistress Bubble, although a small one, is that when we do eventually get Modern on Arena, it'll come one card faster. Alright, let's get on to number 3, shall we? Umezawa's Jitte, a card that's banned in Modern, but unfairly banned in Modern, a card that sees mild legacy play. The thing that makes it a lot more busted in those formats, though, is that the Stoneforge Mystic is legal there, whereas it's not on Arena. So in terms... Alright, let's look at this. Turn 1, you play a creature. Turn 2, you pay 2 to play the Jitte. Turn 3, you pay 2 to equip the creature. Fatal Push? Oh, it's already gone. Let's assume it actually gets equipped and you can actually attack. So you get 2 charge counters on your 1/1, I'm assuming. And then they block, and then it gets like +2/+2, and they kill the creature. Or they don't block, and you just get to kill a creature with toughness 2 or less. Like, this is the epitome of like fair creature combat. Now, in Modern and Legacy, I've heard complaints that it significantly hinders creature decks. However, creature decks are kind of a lot more abundant in Historic recently, especially with elves, goblins, and merfolk all getting their lords. Yeah, there are a lot of creature decks in Historic. In fact, it's almost overbearing. And as I'm going to say for every single card, extremely iconic. Let's get on to number 2. Arcboundravager. Now, I believe this is the most recent card, 2013, but because of how iconic it is, I have decided to put it on the list. We don't really have a Hardened Scales affinity deck on Arena, despite having Hardened Scales and Zabaz and some modular creatures. Arcboundravager would create the archetype from scratch. Or not scratch, it would just boost the archetype into possibly tier 2, tier 1.5, maybe even tier 1. And let's examine the gameplay with Arcboundravager. So you sack an artifact to put a counter on it. Presumably you're sacking creatures that have modular, so you get to move those counters around to other creatures, and then you have the Hardened Scales math where it's like, oh, if I sack this creature to this other creature that's blocked, and then I sack that creature, so it would get an additional scale or additional counter from Hardened Scales, and then I put it on this unblocked creature. There's a lot of math and a lot of decision trees, which is a good thing. Yeah, let's move on to the honorable mention, shall we? Our first honorable mention is Fear of Resistance. 2 mana artifacts, spells cost 1 more to cast. Honestly, it'd be a perfectly fine inclusion to Historic. I don't think it's too salty, but it's just not as flashy or iconic as the other cards I put on this list. Cranial Plating. I did put a lot of good artifacts on this list, but Cranial Plating I think actually might be a bit too much for the artifact deck, especially since it's the best deck in the format right now. However, I still think it'd be a fine include. Ensnaring Breach. This card would get hated so much that it's basically not worth it to put on Arena. You'd hear many cries for it to get banned because it just leads to a lot of unfun situations. But it's a very prolific card throughout all of the Magic formats it's legal in, and definitely iconic enough that it could go into the Brothers War Mystical Archive. Winter Orb. Speaking of Salt, Winter Orb, need I say more? We have Mario, we have Moonsnare Prototype, so we have ways to tap this thing, and yeah, hahaha. Sensei's Divining Top. Honestly, if it didn't take so much time, I would say put it on, but we already know how slow Arena players are anyway, so let's not give them the top. Alright, number 1. Bam. Scroll Wreck. I've played with this card very little, but from the little amount I've played with it, I've loved it. In Historic, we don't have fetch lands, so it won't be great per se, but we do have Fabled Passage. We have Evolving Wilds. And I think that there are many cool ways and unique ways to shuffle your library. So it would be, this card is it's a brewer's paradise. You can brew a cool deck with cards that you don't even realize shuffle your library, and then have this insane late game card selection. But I don't think it'd be too good. If you've never played with this card, I urge you to try and go on Cockatrice or something. Just make a deck, have Scroll Rack, have a few ways to shuffle your library, and just sit back, relax, and have fun. Yeah. It's one of those things that every Magic player has to experience at least once. And with that, it'll conclude the list. As natural, if you have any other artifacts that are on the list that you were hoping to see in Brothers War Mystical Archive, please leave them in the comments below. And with that, that's the end of the video. The end.